Hello, welcome to another series in our TOEFL IBT preparation course. In this lesson today, we are going to practice answering some writing section questions and applying the strategies we've learned. You ready? Let's start. Now, before going over the question examples and sample answers, which answers those questions excellently, let's take a look at a quick review of the task types in the writing section of the TOEFL IBT. So the first one is the integrated task. And remember, in this task, you will have to read a short text and then listen to a related lecture and write based on the points made in both sources. You will be given 20 minutes to do this before you go on to the second question, which is the independent task. The independent tasks, in contrast to the integrated one, only asks you to write based on your opinion on a given topic. Don't forget that you ideally need to write up to 300 words minimum for about 30 minutes. So in total, the writing section of the TOEFL IBT will take 50 minutes. Now, let's go on and practice answering two questions in the TOEFL IBT writing section. Before we go there, let's see the directions for the integrated task in the writing section. Make sure that before the real test, you are already familiar with the directions so that you don't have to spend or use your time to read the directions, and instead you can use your time to answer the questions directly. Here is the directions for the task one. So you will read a passage and then listen to a lecture. You may take notes, and when you write, make sure you elaborate or explain the relationship between the lecture and the reading passage. The question does not ask you to express your personal opinion. So you need to remember about that. The direction also provides with an ideal length of your essay, which is 150 to 225 words. Before the 20 minutes starts, you will be given 3 minutes to read the passage before the listening starts. So let's do that. Here is the reading passage for this example question. Now, before you read, I want you to try to remember the strategies and keep those in mind when you are tackling this question. So the first one is to be prepared to summarize the reading passage. And then don't forget to paraphrase. Do not simply repeat the same words you see in the text or you hear in the listening. Summarize, transition, and relate are the 3 steps to develop your essay effectively, especially for the integrated task. Don't forget to manage your time and keep in mind and remember the criteria that the raters will expect from your response to give you the highest score. Okay, now go ahead and read the passage. Pause the video and try to simulate the real test to give you better practice. And you can start from now. All right, now let's continue with the listening. For the listening part, after the short passage, remember to implement these strategies. Look out for verbal signals that can help you identify the important information from the lecture. And similar to the reading, do not just repeat the same words that you hear from the lecture. Summarize, transition, and relate. And when you are taking notes, to take notes on the key information from the lecture, design your notes so that it can help you remember the key points better. And don't forget to manage your time and think like a reader. Now, let's listen to the lecture.
Now, listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read. Now, listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Many people think that if you want to go into business for yourself, it's best to buy a franchise. But recently, a study looked closely at franchises, and some of the findings call that idea into question. One interesting point was that many franchise contracts force franchise owners to buy very specific goods and services, and those goods and services tend to be overpriced. In other words, even though there are equivalent goods and services available on the market that are considerably cheaper, the owners aren't allowed to buy them. Another point was about advertising. When you buy a franchise, you agree to pay up to 6% of your sum total in sales. That's quite a lot of money. One thing you're supposed to get in return for this money is that the company does the advertising for you. But the company doesn't advertise your business. What gets advertised is the company's brand, the company's products, which are sold by many other businesses in many other places. It turns out individual franchise owners mostly get very little benefit, much less than they would get by spending even half that money to advertise their own business directly. Finally, the biggest issue? Security. Starting a franchise is not the most secure option out there. True, it's less risky than starting an independent business, but there's a third option that the passage didn't talk about. You can buy an already existing independent business from a previous owner. And the study showed that independent businesses bought from previous owners have twice as much chance of success during the first 4 years as franchises.
All right. So that's the example of the listening part in the integrated task of the writing section. Now, let's go on and try to answer this question. So, as you can see, you will have 20 minutes to plan and write your response. And then it will be judged on the basis of the quality of your writing and how well your response presents the points, not just in the reading, but also in the lecture. There is a clue for you about the ideal length of your essay for this task, which is 150 to 225 words. Now, keeping in mind of the key strategies we've learned, let's try to answer this question. Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they challenge specific points made in the reading passage. Go ahead and pause the video. Try to answer in 20 minutes before we see an example of an excellent response. All right, have you done it? Now, let's compare your response to an example of an excellent response. So don't forget the strategies that first you need to make sure you are prepared to summarize the passage in the beginning of your essay. And if you remember the short passage well, there are 3 key points that you can take. First one is the advantages of having a franchise business for beginning business owners, which is reliable suppliers that are already available. The second advantage in the passage is the already established brand. And the third one, the proven business model, which means less risk for the business owners. Now, looking at the listening, on the other hand, here are some notes that you should take during your listening. So we can see that the notes shows that the study mentioned by the lecturer questions the advantages of the franchise system. And there's the second point that talks about how the business owners or the franchisees are forced to buy expensive supplies regardless of the availability of the suppliers. And the advertisement money that they have to pay gives them less benefit. And the next point here shows that the lecturer agrees with the text in that franchise is less risky than in the independent business. But it also points out that there is a third option that the text didn't cover, which is buying an existing independent business, which based on the research that the professor cited, is twice more successful than buying a franchise. Now, after you get these key ideas from the sources, you can then start your planning. And remember, you should spend around 4 minutes to plan your essay before starting to write it. So the summary, which is the advantages of the franchise, the transition, a statement that shows what the lecture stance is regarding the topic, and then the body of the essay, which relates the key points from the text and the lectures, as you can see in the points in the outline. And then the last paragraph will be a brief conclusion about the information. Now, let's see how this outline is developed into an excellent essay. So here is the example. And if you pay attention here, you can see that the summary is the first paragraph, including the transition or the sentence that describes the lecture's stance, whether she supports or disagrees with the ideas from the text. And then the body of the essay that relates the ideas from the text and the lecture, and the last paragraph with the conclusion. Now, feel free to pause the video and study the example of the essay in its connection to the outline especially. Now, after you write your essay, don't forget to spend some time to edit or proofread your essay. And an example of that process for this example answer will be like this. So as you can see, in the editing part, the student improves the word choices he used by using words that are more academic. And also, he edits the organization of his ideas by separating the transition sentence into one independent paragraph from the previous one. And by doing this, we can see that it becomes clearer. The ideas have better cohesion and coherence, which is one of the key criteria to get the highest score in the writing section. Now you can pause the video to study the final edit of the essay and make sure you understand why this essay is considered excellent by the raters. All right, so that's an example of a response for the integrated task, which is the first question in the writing section. Let's move on and take a look at an example of the independent task, the second question in the writing section. So here is the example. As you can see, the directions given there, it asks you to read the question, and then you have 30 minutes to plan, write, and revise your essay, along with the clue of the expected number of words to get a good score for this task. All right, now don't forget to implement our strategies that we have learned in the course. The first one, choose opinion that is easiest to support. Remember, the raters will not assess how good, how correct or incorrect your opinion is. Instead, they will focus on how you expand your ideas using reasons or examples or other supporting details to support your choice. So therefore, choose an opinion that is easier to support. And then include an outline sentence with parallel structure at the beginning of your essay. Prepare facts, examples, and experience to achieve the ideal length that you need to get to 300 words minimum. Use formal transition words. Do not just copy the words from the question. Try to use different words by paraphrasing. Use different structures, both simple and complex. Don't forget about the 5-paragraph essay organization. Manage your time. Pay attention to your capitalization and punctuation, especially in the editing part. And finally, think like a rater. Remember the criteria that they will look for to give you the highest score. Okay, so now go ahead. 30 minutes, answer the question. Okay, so are you ready to compare your response to an example of an excellent one? Let's see. So first of all, you need to choose opinion that is easiest to support. In the example answer that I will show you, the student chose to agree with the statement. And here is the outline of his essay that he made during the first 5 minutes. So you can see there that he made sure that he reminds himself with experience and fact and examples to make sure he can cover the 300 words in his essay. And then you can see that he follows the 5-paragraph essay format, with paragraph 1 giving his thesis statement and outline sentence with the listed 3 reasons. And then paragraph 2 explaining the first reason, paragraph 3 explaining the second reason, paragraph 4 the third, and paragraph 5 a brief conclusion. Now, let's see how the student expanded this outline into an excellent response. Starting with paragraph 1. So you can see in paragraph 1 that the student provides the thesis statement saying, I personally believe that it actually stifles their potential. So he shows that he agrees that technology actually limits children's creativity. Okay. And then we can see his outline sentence over here. This is because modern technology keeps them from exploring the outside world. So that is his first reason. Creating solutions on their own and collaborating with their peers through direct contact. So you can see that the structure of the three reasons are in parallel: exploring, creating, and collaborating. And that is the parallel structure that we've learned in our strategy. And then in the first paragraph, he explains the first reason about how the technology keeps the children from exploring the outside world. And he used his experience. I remember when I was a child, I couldn't stay long because I would go out to play, and that built my creativity. And then the next paragraph explains his reason that modern technology prevents children to collaborate with their friends through direct contact, and that indirectly limits their opportunity to build creativity. And then the next paragraph talks about that one, and the previous one is talking about creating solutions on their own. And finally, there is a brief conclusion sentence to emphasize his choice or his opinion. Okay, so again, that's the opening paragraph with the outline sentence. And then he uses his experience. He uses formal transition words such as hence. And finally, in the last 5 minutes, he spent some time editing his essay by fixing some minor grammar mistakes and also looking at how he can make his essay more concise, simpler yet clearer. Okay, now go ahead and pause the video to try to read the example essay better and more detail so that you can understand the components that make this essay an excellent one. And that will be the end of our lesson for this series. Thank you for watching and see you in another lesson.